Welcome back, everyone, to our special series in honor of National Women's Month. We're calling it Focus on Women. So here were the questions that we asked earlier. Do you think gender equality exists? Do you think men and women are paid the same for the same job? And who holds the power where you work? Let's find out what our viewers had to say about all of this. This first viewer says, I think at one time it was most definitely men, but times are changing. I think the recession has hit more men than women, and women seem to be becoming the breadwinners while more men are staying at home. That actually comes from Jeff. Now, this one says, I believe men in some cases still get paid more than women. That's sad but true, but I do believe gender equality exists today, if you can believe it. That comes from Miriam. And now we'll get some reaction from our guests to those questions. Is it something that is, at least in some pockets, exists in existence now?
I just want to talk about the leadership factor, because it's not there in leadership across all the professions and across our elected officials. On average, women make up 18% of leaders in the country, whether it's in the Congress where it's 17%, or in Fortune 500 CEOs where it's 3%. So in leadership is where we're really focusing at Vision 2020, because we think when more women are in leadership, as Leslie said, that it will improve life for everyone, and it'll be a shared responsibility with men.
In fact, next week on this show, in this time slot, we are going to be doing an entire show on women and leadership, because I did the research and found that, boy, you think you see more women out there these days, but they're just not as many as perhaps there should be.
And I think everyone would agree, men rule, no worries, but you can't enact change unless you get into those positions of power. Mm-hmm. So if we don't have more women representing down in DC where we need it, how can we enact the necessary change? I wonder why more women aren't in politics. Is it just, do you get beat up? Is it too grueling of a task? Are there too many skeletons in the closet? What's happening?
In Pennsylvania, it's even worse. The stat is something like 14.6%, though you're a majority of the population. And Lynn can speak very well to this, because she was part of the political process, but politics is tough. It's considered sometimes a dirty business, although you're there for the greater good. You've got to have a strong constitution, and traditionally it's been harder for women to raise money than it has been for men.
Yeah, if there's an industry that's still kind of the old boys network or the old boys club, it might be politics. And I'm sure there are other ones, but politics in particular. Is that something that the Conference on Women addresses, the leadership in addition to gender equality?
Absolutely. I've been privileged to really put that conference on for this will be our 8th year in Philadelphia, and it is all about education. It's all about growing personally, growing professionally, and unless women are educated, unless they realize that there's a problem, then you can't fix it. And in answer to your viewers, absolutely, times are getting better. We are entering the workforce in greater numbers. Women are getting married a little later now, so that we can do that, but we still have a lot of work to be done, so we can't be complacent, and we have to be educated so we have tools to really, really right the wrongs.
And that's actually what Flair magazine tries to do. It tries to educate women and tries to be an advocate for them.
Exactly, and it allows them to be an advocate for themselves and also connect the generations so that we can actually learn from our mother generation and grandmother generation, and that bridges gap.
And you can teach us a lot too. It's a two-way. It's a two-way learning experience. Yeah.
Do you think women are strong enough advocates for themselves? I know everyone at this table is a woman's advocate, but how about those ladies who are watching at home? Do they speak up enough for themselves? Do they take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and say, hey, I expect to be paid the same, and I expect to do the same, have the same responsibility and leadership?
I'm not sure that there's time to do that. I mean, you're raising a family, you're working full time, you want to be your own advocate, but women, I think, generally speaking, we're still pretty modest. We're not it's really hard for us to toot our own horn, and let's change that, by golly. I don't know how to do it, but why not?
Since this is Women's History Month, my way of thinking about this is it's not just studying women's history, it's making
it,
history. And that what we really need to do is step up in terms of shaping the future, because it's the future for us and for our children and grandchildren. And I think there is really a moment in history now when people are ready to talk about this, to talk about the contributions that women and men together can make to make a better nation. And so voting is one of the things that I'm really focused on, because I think that women do vote in greater numbers than men, but we still are very bad about our turnout. So we want to increase and mobilize the women voters of America, and I don't care what party they are or who they're voting for, but so that we have a record turnout in the year 2020 when we celebrate the 19th Amendment.
It's so funny because Marilyn and I talked about that on her Woman of the Week program, which I should mention airs on Ben FM on Sunday mornings.
Right, just this morning.
And we talked, but you talk to women every week, and one thing that we said is it's amazing the number of women that don't exercise that right to vote. And when I give speeches to women's groups, I'm always driving that point home, because the people in that suffragette movement went, they sometimes gave up their lives to make sure that we have that right to vote, and when you don't exercise it, that's
you can never.
It's like an offense to all of those women that came before us.
It really is. When I was executive director of the Pennsylvania Commission for Women, we ran a cross-state marketing campaign with big hot pink billboards that said, "Who are the most powerful women in Pennsylvania?" And underneath it said, "Women voters, register, vote." It's terribly important, and when women complained to me about issues, and they were valid complaints, but my first question was, do you vote? Because if you don't vote, you can't complain, and that's the truth.
Boy, we should all have that on a t-shirt, because we all believe that. We all say the same thing. You can't complain if you don't get out there and vote. So what other, voting is obviously a huge issue, but what else can people do to assure that gender equality, maybe we could attain it before 2020? What can we all be doing?
Well, one thing that I think is really important, and just thinking about what Ashley was saying about the generations, we need to learn from past experience and past mistakes. We need to learn from history. And I went to an all-girls school and an all-women's college, and I never had a class in women's history. I never really knew much about anything except the deeds of men over the years. And it's a great opportunity to kind of build on what has gone before and to work across the generations, particularly at the polls. I really think that is such a key issue, and if we could all kind of agree we're going to do that, we could make big changes.
Okay, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We're giving you some suggestions on how women can change things for the better. If you have suggestions, of course, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us what your experience has been like and what you could share that could enable us to improve. We'll be right back.